Hi, welcome to the training webinar. I'm Dale Franks. Next week, we are going to do something new. I'm building a special project, and it is becoming more and more complex the more that I keep building it. But we're going to do something next week called Unified Approvals, where I'm going to set up a system where we can have a template form and then just create process forms as needed from a template form, all of which can use the same approval process. And I'm trying to build in some special sauce to create some ad hoc approvers, and I'm still working that out in a way that makes it sort of simple and logical for you to be able to build into your process. And I think it might be interesting, but it's something that I have never attempted before, and I am going to attempt next week. So if you want something that is completely new, something that we've never talked about before, and may even constitute a new framework for building applications in Process Director, you may want to attend next week's webinar so that you can see what it is that I'm doing. And I don't know if it's something I can finish in a single week or if it is going to be a series of webinars that are going to have to take place over 2 or 3 weeks. It just depends on what it is that I finally get built. And I'm now down to just 1 week to finish it. But next week should be interesting, if nothing else, because it's going to be something new for both of us, all of us. So we'll see how well that works out next week. This week, we're going to do some advanced form stuff. And I've got a couple of things on the list of things to talk about on my talking points that I have displayed on my screen here. We are going to talk about form caching and going to get into a little bit of detail about form caching and its use. We're going to take a look at setting up dependent controls, either controls that are dependent on other controls or controls that are dependent on the process. And we're also going to talk about using forms as the main UI, which I know I have talked about once before, but we're going to get into the details on that and how you can use forms to create your workspaces in Process Director. So without further ado, let's go ahead and get into it. And we are going to start off today by talking about form caching. We're all familiar with Process Director and forms and creating knowledge views based on form instances and returning form fields. And that's great. That's the basic knowledge. The trouble with especially knowledge views, whenever we're trying to query form instances, is the way that Process Director stores form data. In point of fact, the way data is stored in Process Director, and let's just go to the documentation website and take a look at something. So we're going to go into the database reference here, and we're going to go to table definitions. And the table that we care about for today is table form data. This is the table in which every single value in every single control in every single form instance is stored. We know what form instance it is because we have a form instance ID. And we know what control it is because we have the form's control ID. If it's an array, we know what row it is in the array. We know the data type of the form, both the actual data type in SQL or Oracle, and the raw data type that we use in Process Director. If it is a string value, it is stored in this field. If it is a numeric value, it's stored in this field. If it's a date time value, it is stored in this field. If it happens to be a drop-down control or other list control, radio button list, list box, as well as the value, there is always a display string, so we have the display string stored in the database. If the field has been marked for deletion or has actually been deleted from the form, there is a marker for that, and we have the form's field name here, whether it's encrypted or not, the ident for it, and I forget off the top of my head what S-value search means. But the point being, every single form value is stored in a single field, table form data. Now, as a practical matter, what that means is that whenever we run a knowledge view, that knowledge view has to go to table form data. Now, imagine a scenario in which you have 100, 200 different processes. Each of those processes have their own form. Each of those 100 or 200 forms has 5, 6, 7, 8, 1,000 form instances. Each one of those forms has 30 form fields on it on average. That is a lot of data, because multiply 200 by 1,000 by 30 by, well, it's a lot of form values that get stored in the database. And that one table is where everything has to be pulled. So when you create a knowledge view that says, okay, I want you to look at this form instance and pull, these form field values out for each form instance. Well, it can do it, but it does take time because we've got to chop through everything in table form data. Well, there is a faster way, although there are some drawbacks. You can, in fact, create a cache, a special cache table that just contains the data from one form definition. So all of the form instances for that one form definition can be stored in its own special cache table. I know I've talked about form caching before in other contexts, but we're going to get into a fair amount of detail on form caching today. On the Properties tab of every form definition in the Options section, the very, very last property here is called Enable Form Data Cache. And so if you check that, then Process Director will, when prompted, create a cache of all of the form field values for this particular form definition. All of the instances for it will be stored in a separate table that contains only the form instances for, or the form field values for the form instances of this form definition. So what that means is if I query that data rather than the normal form instance data, I don't have to go look at table form data and chop through potentially millions and millions of records to pull out just the records I want. I know that all of the records that I want are in the cache table. Well, that sounds good so far. I have done, and we may refer to it a little bit later, just as an example. I have done a webinar called Business Values Performance. I'm not sure whether that is one of the ones that is live on YouTube or whether you have to go to the support site and go to the webinars page and search for it in the legacy search page, which has all of the videos that are not publicly available on YouTube. But you can find it. It's either on YouTube or you can find it on the legacy search page. It's called Business Values Performance. And in that, I actually show how much faster a cached table can be to return data than it is to try to return it via normal knowledge view pulling from table form data. So if you actually, and as I remember, I actually had a timer on screen, and we literally timed the amount of time it took for each of those things to run. So you can actually see in real time how much more performance increase you get from having a cached table. Sounds good so far, but like everything, there are trade-offs. The cache has to be created, and the value that you can retrieve from the cache is only as accurate as it was when the data was last cached. Now, this is a brand new form. There is no data because I've never submitted this form, but we are going to need to create a form cache for the data. So I'm going to go ahead and save my form, and we're just going to run a couple of instances of it just to get some data. Now, I'm only going to have a couple of instances here, so it's not going to be super impressive, and I won't be able to show you with just 3 form instances, any great performance increases. I've got an entire webinar on performance increases and some of the things that you can do. So refer to that if you want actual examples using a large data set. We're only going to submit a couple of forms here real quick just to have some form instances that have run. And so with 3 or 4 form instances, however many it is that I'm submitting here, we're not going to be able to tell much of a performance difference because we're only returning 3 records. If you have 1,000 records, then you can see an actual performance difference, and that 1,000 record set is what I use in the business values performance webinar. But we should now have 3 or 4 form instances. I don't know how many I actually submitted while I was talking. It looks like it was 3. Okay, great. But even though we checked that button for enable form data cache, we haven't actually enabled it. We haven't created the cache yet. We're going to have to do that. Now, there is a special page that you have to run, and you may want to run this via bputil on the Windows scheduler to routinely create your cache. I happen to have the link off screen here, so I can just click on it, and the link is right there. It's just build_form_cache.aspx. That's the page, and that's what builds our form cache. So we have now built a form cache for all of our tables. And by the way, you run it once, it rebuilds all of your cached tables. As you're about to see, I have many on this system. So let's go ahead and close that page. And now let's take a look at where these caches go. I'm just going to go ahead and create a data source here, because if you want to see your cached data, then it's stored in the internal database, not the internal user database where you store all of your data whenever you create, Excel files and stuff. You've seen me use that quite a lot on various projects, but that's just your user data. The internal database actually contains the core process director tables. We're always very iffy about whether or not we should tell you about or recommend that you access the internal database. Generally, we don't recommend you access the internal database because do you want to destroy your entire process director installation? Playing around with that is how you destroy your entire process director installation. But for our purposes today, we're going to create the advanced forms data source, and we are going to set it to internal database. And we have to set it to the internal database because we're looking for a couple of special tables. And they are table_FDC, and then the first part of the form ID in this case. So there we go. And now, as you can see, I have a lot of tables here called table FDC, whatever. We want to look for our table. And so notice it's table FDC underscore, and then it's just a bunch of numbers and letters. Well, that bunch of numbers and letters happens to be the first portion of the form ID for the form. So we're going to need to know what that form ID is. So we're going to go to our advanced form webinar form, and we're going to scroll all the way to the bottom of the page, and we're going to look for its form ID. And it starts off with 200-35826. So 200-35826. And we're doing that 20, you know, I don't want to show you that yet. We'll get to that. 200-35826. 200-35826. So table FDC 200. Well, I went way past it. That's internal user database. Sorry, did I not save it? Internal database. Let me update that so it saves that. All right, so now we go back to table FDC 200. It's got to be here somewhere. I just created the cache for it. There it is, right there. 200-35826. And I'm going to set this as our table for this data source. Now, while we're here, you may have, as I do, multiple form definitions that are set to do your table caching. Because we save the first part of the form ID as part of the table name, if I'm looking here and I see this table FDC, whatever, I don't know what the GUIDs are. However, happily, in the content list, not only do I have the ability to search by name, I have the ability to search by GUID so I can find objects. So if I ever am here and I need to know what form one of these tables is, so let's take this one, 3B79E. Now, also keep in mind, I may have deleted this form because I don't know what all of these table FDCs are, but let's just try, what is it? 3B79, 3B79. I think I know what table it is or what form it is. It's probably this one, 3B79 E959. E95. Oops, E959. It is definitely this results form here, no data. And I can prove that, I suppose, by simply going to that form. Let's close the options tab so it's not in the way. And the form ID here is, in fact, 3B79E959. So, helpful hint, being able to search the content list by GUID. This is one of those times, even if you're not a developer and you don't care about GUIDs, normally, this is one of those important times when the GUID is important and you can take a look at your table FDC underscore whatever, and you can just type in the content list the appropriate part of the GUID and it will find the form for you. So being able to search by GUID, even if you're not a developer, is occasionally, and by developer, I mean somebody who actually needs to do things in code and needs to know what the form ID is. Even if you're just a regular implementer, there are occasionally times when you need to know, just based on, as we've done here, just based on what this table name is, what form it is that I'm talking to, because we're not using the names, we're using the GUID. So to know which of these table FDC underscore whatevers is what and what table it's looking at, you have to be able to find it in the content list. Now, I did not mark it when we did table FDC 200-35826. So that should be our table. We're going to go ahead and save that. And let's go back and be sure I got the right one. Yes, 200352826 in the form ID right there. Okay, great. So now I've got a business, or not a business value. I have a data source that just looks at that form. And we're going to go ahead and get rid of my search phrase so I can see my entire content list. So now that I have that, I'll just show you, and while I can't imagine why you might do this, I suspect that some of you might at least be curious to know if you can do it. So we're going to create a business value so that we can query that cache. So we're just going to call it the advanced form BV. And there we go. And now I'm going to look at the advanced forms data source. We'll test that connection. It is good. As you can see, I only have one table here. So basically it stores the same tables that are in table form data. Not the same tables, the same fields that are in table form data. So if I want to return this, I can select star from, and I got to do something special here. I'm going to need to use square brackets. I'm going to need to put the name of the table in square brackets. And the reason I am is because there are dashes in the GUID, and those show up as part of the table name. And those dashes will not work in a regular SQL statement unless I place the entire value inside those square brackets. Those square brackets basically tell SQL Server, this is a weird name. It's wrong. It's not supposed to be this way, but sticking it in brackets makes everything okay, and everything will be okay. So we have 15 records returned from this table. Because we've got the section header, and we've got the section header info, and we only have 3 fields on, or at least we think we only have 3 fields on the form, but I've actually got sections in there, and those sections are form fields, and those values get saved. But technically, I can pull this form. So as you can see, here's form 628, request number 628, Dale Franks, and here's 630 and Dale Franks. And I've got submission dates over here as well. So when I submitted the form 8/7/2025, I do not know what that value is there or what field that is. It's just, I'd have to go back and do some investigation to see what that date value is. But the date that does work is my submission date. So that's fine. So the submission date is great. I think what it's doing is it's taking the request number and using 630 is calculating the date as 1/1/1799. And that's getting stuck in there. That's okay. We'll never use that because we're always going to pull this value here. But as you can see, while I could make a business value out of this and I could query it, because the database is so hyper normalized, I'm not sure how useful this would be unless you had a lot of weird filters, right? So like where requests, I don't even know how I do it. I need a where statement to be able to pull just the request number and the where S field name equals submitter, or where S value equals, or where's the S value? They're out of here. S value. Well, of course, that stores my user ID because that's a user picker in the submitter field. Even though the display value is Dale Franks, it actually stores as the value my user ID, my user GUID in the system. So Technically, is it possible to create a business value to query a cached form and retrieve data? Well, yes, it is quite manifestly possible to do that. Is this useful to you as a normal person in any way? I would argue it most likely is not, unless you really, really, really know what you're doing with SQL and you know what to pull from all of these different fields in the form, because it is just stored in such a weird way with strings and date times and numbers all stored in different fields. It's odd, but it can be done. This is real data. This is all the form data that is saved for those three form instances. And those three form instances, because there are apparently five different fields on that form, those three instances are going to return 15 results from my data cache. Now, by the way, this data is never going to change. Well, it's not going to change yet. So this data is only relevant as to the last time that I ran that cache, right? So let's go ahead and save this real quick just to show you. Just remember we had 15 records there, and I'm just going to go over here and I'm going to run this form and I'm going to submit it, and I'm going to, of course, deny the request. And let's do this one more time. Let's give ourselves two more forms here. Submit, and we'll deny it once it is submitted. There we go. And now let's go back to our business value and let's test our query again. It's still returning 15 results. It's going to continue to return 15 results, no matter how many forms I submit until I refresh the cache. So the downside to the cache is it's only valid up to whenever the cache was last generated. Now, if I go back to the build form cache.aspx page again, and I rebuild my form cache, so building, it now says the form cache is complete. So now I should be able to test the query. And now I have 25 results displayed. So submitting the extra 2 form instances, I now have 5 fields per form. That gives me my extra 10 fields, or my extra 10 database rows in anyway. And so therefore now it goes to 25 results. So this is only going to change inside the database whenever you recreate that cache. So it's perfectly fine to query that cache data, and we'll take a look at how to do that here next. Just remember that query is not going to return what you think it's going to return if you haven't ran the cache in a while. So running that cache on a more or less routinized basis, whatever that schedule is that seems best to you, it's going to be necessary to enable your cached forms to work. However, it does, and I don't think we're going to see any performance difference here if we mess around with this, but let's play around with it a little bit. Let's go and do some knowledge viewing. So we'll open up our knowledge view folders and we'll create a knowledge view. We'll just do a normal knowledge view, and we'll call this this is our normal K view. So normally what we would do is we would create our knowledge view. We would associate our form with it. So there's our advanced form as well in our form. And we'd go in here and we would, let's turn all these off and all those off and all those off. And let's turn all these off except for form instances. And we don't really have too many form fields here, but let's just return the submission date just for giggles here. So we'll go with form field, and Let's update our knowledge view. I didn't want to run it. I just wanted to update it. And for our submission date, now we know what form it is, so we can just go submission date, right? So we'll just pick submission date. There we go. And now we can update and run it. We're not going to see any performance difference really, like I said, because we're only returning 5 records. So it's pretty easy to return. Okay, great. This is my live view of the data. I can, however, just query for the cached data. So we're just going to copy this knowledge view, and we're going to open, and we're going to call this one cached. And there's only one thing that we have to do if we want to look at our cached data, and that is to run right over here to our configure tab and click on that checkbox right there. This knowledge view will only use cached form instance data. And then we can update and run that. Now, in our particular case, we're not going to see any difference between these two knowledge views. And of course, we wouldn't unless I went back into here and I submitted another. And I'll only submit one. We only have to see one difference. So we'll just submit one here. We'll deny it to end the process. And now if we go to our knowledge views and we go to the cached one and we run it, we have 6 items. And if we go to our normal one and we run it, it still says 6 items. So I know I didn't create the cache. Okay, how many form instances do we have? 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6. This knowledge view will only use cached form instance data. This knowledge view will not use. So there's normal and cached. So unless there is a bug that has been introduced recently, I should, in the cached one, not be seeing. So it is either not looking at my cached data the way that it is supposed to, which means there is a little problem with this knowledge view. So let me make another one. Let me just test again. Now because I should be seeing 2 different results in these knowledge views. So let me just submit another one. This should give us 7, right? 7 form instances. Great. Let's confirm that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7. Okay, so let's run our normal run, and that is returning 7 items. And our cached, which is supposed to use cached form instance, that is returning 7 items. I am not sure why that is happening. Oh, actually, I am sure why it is happening. The form instances exist. So it is returning all 7 form instances. What is not being returned is this data right here for these 2 form instances. That cached data doesn't exist. So it's pulling the correct form instances. So it is giving me 7 items. What it isn't pulling are these 2 pieces of data here, which are coming from the form because it only wants to pull that cached form instance data. When I have form field values in the knowledge view, that's when it has to pull from the table form data. So my normal knowledge view, when I run it, is showing me all my data. It's grabbing me my current data. But the other ones are going to be empty of data. It's going to show me the right number, but what it's not going to show me is the right data because that cache hasn't been created. And again, until I go back in and I run that form cache, so this is the build form cache page, I should probably take that out as a separate so we can see that URL. That's the URL, build underscore form underscore cache.aspx. Now that it's run, I should be able to simply rerun this knowledge view. And now I've got data. So that is the downside for caching. It's just not going to be current if you're using form data. It's only going to show you the cached form data, but it's way faster to go grab that data out of there than it would be to go grab it out of table form data, especially for a large data source. So let's just run the test real quick since I've already got it set up for doing that. So I have a large data set. It's got a lot of records. So there are probably, there's at least 1,000 results that are going to be returned. And I have two forms, which I ran a little earlier today, so they should both run optimally. I have a form that's going to return this 1,000 rows of data. And I have one that's just going to use a regular knowledge view and one that's going to use a cached knowledge view. And so what I'm going to do is I'm just going to go ahead and I'm going to run the plain knowledge view first and move it out of the way. And then I'm going to run the cached knowledge view. So this is cached on this side. And this one down here, this is my plain knowledge view. Now, both of these are returning a knowledge view, one cached, one plain. And we're just going to look to see which comes up first. It's 1,000 rows and it's a knowledge view. So it's going to take a while for them to both come up. The plain came up first, barely. But because I ran the cached one after, and remember I ran it, then I had to move it, then I had to change the checkboxes, then I had to go and run the cache knowledge view, and it still showed up almost exactly as the same time. So even at that, where there's not much of a difference there, had they both ran at the same time, had both forms started at the same time, the cached version with the 1,000 rows of data, that's the one that would have come up first. So there is a noticeable improvement there. Now it is a form, and so all of these form fields, in both cases, 1,000 form fields have to be written. I think it would probably be better if we just looked at the knowledge views and just ran them and timed them. And that's what I did in the webinar. But even at a form where both forms still have to write the same 1,000 records to form fields on the form, even at that, the cached form came up at least a couple of seconds faster than the plain knowledge view. Although in both cases, the long pole in the tent for the form is the actual writing of several thousand form fields. There's 1,000 rows of data, and each row has 4 or 5 data fields in it. So we're talking about trying to write 5,000 data fields on a form. It just takes some time. So keep the ability to cache forms in mind, along with the fact that there are some upsides and some downsides of being able to cache forms. Also keep in mind that yes, you can query those cached forms directly from the database, and you can pull data. And by the way, what I said earlier about the internal database, yeah, we really don't want you playing around in the internal database much. However, it is safe to be able to go into the internal database and pull data out of the internal database. As long as you only use, a select statement in SQL, select whatever from this table. That's perfectly safe. You can use selects all the time. In fact, just so that you know, there are some really important, and I got to find them here. There are some important views that you need that often help in determining what the health of your system is, how active it is. There are some views that are built in, especially for your use, that we actually want you to query and that it may be useful for you to build business values on. BP process, BP process task, BP process task user, BP task list, and BP user. Those are all views that have important data to help you look and see what's going on your system, how busy it is. And those are all documented as well. So if we go into the documentation, to the documentation website, again, in the database reference for Process Director, there is this subject right here, this topic called internal views. So if you click on that, it lists these internal views that we just looked at in our internal user data source and what it is that they do in the system and the type of data that they return. So being able to go back and pull this data out for you as a system administrator might be something that you consider important, and you might want to consider just creating an internal database data source, if for no other reason, to be able to build business values on these 5 views that we've created for you to assist you with knowing how well your system is running and knowing what's going on the system. So if you're a cloud customer and you do not have an internal database um, data source in your system, put in a support ticket. Just say, I would like to be able to query BP process task, etc. So please create a internal user data source that returns the standard internal views from Process Director so that we can use them. And I or whoever handles your support ticket can go ahead and create that for you and build those business values for you as needed. So just submit a tech support ticket and we'll get to it. All right, so let's go back to our form. Let's talk about dependent controls. Dependent controls fall into 2 major categories. I have control B, which cannot return any data or cannot show me any data unless control A is filled out, and it should only show me data that is related to control A. In most cases, this is applicable to drop-down controls. I need drop-down control A. When I select it, determines what I see in drop-down control B. I'm not going to belabor this because it's a relatively basic function, but in your samples folder, you should actually have a form sample that covers that. So we're just going to take a brief look at that and then move on. And that is, which one is it? Email template, fill an array, fill selected items. I think it's, well, where is it in here? I thought I knew which one it was. Setting form fields via URL parameter, validation, Word export. I've got a lot of different samples, over the years. I've created a whole bunch of them. Okay, fine. Let's just use what we had from last week in the case management course that we, well, no, those aren't interrelated. Okay, now I don't know where my sample is. I thought that was forms. Oh, sure it was form. Maybe it's in data. No, it's not in data. It will at this time, I think, be faster for me to fill drop-down fields from an external database. That's kind of an old sample. Okay, fine. You know what? I'm just going to build it. Why not? So we'll just do something simple. I know it's in sample somewhere. I don't remember where it is. And I thought I would be able to pull it just really instantly. But okay, fine. We're just going to do it from scratch. We're going to create an Excel spreadsheet, a very small Excel spreadsheet, but we're going to do it. Besides, it's only 10:45. We got plenty of time. So we're going to create a new Excel spreadsheet. And I'm just going to call this cat ID and category. And we're not going to get too in depth on this. We're just going to have category 1 and category 2. And I'm just going to call this stuff and things. And we'll just call this sample cats. And then we'll create another spreadsheet. We're going to make some interrelated records. We're just going to call it object ID and object name and category ID. So we're just going to go 1, 2, 1, 2, and we'll create our object IDs 1, 2, and we're only going to have 4 here. So 1, 2, 3. Oops, I didn't mean to move them. I meant to fill them down. Well, I apparently have. What in the world? Have I forgotten how to use a mouse? That's all I wanted to do was just fill down. And so we'll have this object dog, cat, and wolf, and lion. So dog, cat, wolf, and lion. So I actually have 2 interrelated tables here. I have a table of categories, and I only have 2, stuff and things. And then I have a table of objects, each of which has their own unique IDs, and each of these objects are assigned either category 1 or category 2. And I'm just going to go ahead and save. Oh, I better change this. And we'll call this sample objects, and I will put the E in sample. There we go. I'm just going to save this as SMAPLE sample. And we'll just save this to, can I save this to my desktop from here? Yes, I can. I hate that Microsoft is now trying to force you every time you save anything to save it to OneDrive. Let me do save as just to be sure that I did in fact save it to my desktop. Browse. Desktop doc. Okay, well, finally, fine. That's sample.xlsx. It's in desktop doc. Great. So I am going to go back over here to my advanced forms webinar, and I am going to put this, oops, not what I wanted. Cancel. Document file is what I wanted, not drop down object. So we'll browse for our document. So it is in desktop doc, and it was sample.xlsx. So we'll upload that. And as it happens, I have an internal user database data source. That's a global one. So that's the one we're going to use. So we're going to open this up, and we're just going to go to our import database. Our destination data source is going to be data sources, internal user DB global. That contains everything. And we'll just call this Excel cats sample. So that's going to be the table that gets created. Um, we'll do all of the normal stuff and we'll import the table now, and it should have created my little table. This is taking a very long time to create a new table that only has a couple of rows of data. So I'm not sure why it is taking all of that time. I would have expected this to have happened fairly instantly. And yet, here we are. I'm going to assume that I uploaded the correct one. I don't know what's going on there, so I am just going to proceed. Okay. Am I still broadcasting? Can we still hear me? Okay, well, we're back. Okay. Let's try this one more time. That's what I expected to happen the first time. I don't know whether I had some uh, network glitch or something that was preventing me from communicating. I don't even know actually if I'm broadcasting to you. In any event, now we have our data. So I'm going to create a couple of business values. So we'll create a business value to pull our categories. So we'll call this one sample cats. And we'll hook this back up to our global business value. And we are looking for Excel underscore sample cats. There we go, Excel. Cats sample cats. So that's my table with my category and my category ID. So we're just going to go select star from, and I'm not going to type all that, order by category, and we'll test that query. Great. There's my two categories and my category ID. We are going to add those columns as properties, and I now have one business value. And so we're going to stop there for the moment and go to our form. And on my form, we're going to go into the form design, and we're just going to drop in a drop-down control, and we're going to call it categories. Filling the categories drop-down is going to be real simple. We're just going to fill it with that business values. And I'm going to put another drop-down here, and I'll put it right next to it. We'll just call it objects. And we're going to do anything with it yet, but we're going to drop the drop-down in here so I don't have to come back in and make it later. So I now have my objects drop-down. So here's what I want to do. This objects drop-down is dependent on the categories drop-down. In other words, I should only see items in this drop-down that match the items that exist in this drop-down. So when I pick a category, I only want to see the two objects that match that category. So if it is category 1, it should be dog or wolf. If it is category 2, it should be cat or lion, or perhaps vice versa. In any way, one should be dog or wolf, and the other should only show me cat or lion. Other than that, I don't want this drop down to show me anything. In fact, I might want to disable it until after I have selected a value in the objects drop down. But now I've got to configure these two drop downs. So let's save and close this, and we will go to the Fill Drop Downs tab, and we will fill the first dropdown with our two categories. So on the fill dropdowns tab, we'll just add a dropdown. Obviously, it's going to be the categories, and we're going to have to set it via a business value. And I did not name that business value. So give me a second here, because it is going to be next to impossible to find that business value unless I pop it open, go to the group and value picker tab, and I call it ADV forms. So now, at least, and we'll call it ADV forms 25 in case I have other advanced forms drop downs there. Great. So let's go back to my form and go back to the fill dropdowns tab. And we want to set the categories dropdown to the appropriate business value. So we'll go into business values, and we're looking for ADV forms 25 sample cats. And now we can put the values in. Now I have a category ID, which is 1 or 2, and then I have the category name, and I have a display text and value here. So what we are going to do is we are going to need to use the category ID to pass to our next business value that we're going to create. So I'm just going to put in a select 1 there, and our display text is going to be the category, and our category ID is going to be the cat ID. And so that should enable me to build a form that shows me my stuff and things that are in my dropdown. Okay, well, that's great. Happy with that so far. Not quite done. Going to need to do a couple of things. What I want to happen is now, whenever I select a category, I want to be able for that selection to prompt a refresh of the form and invoke the fill dropdowns tab for the second dropdown, which I haven't yet created. So what I need to do is go to the form controls, take my categories dropdown, and I'm going to need to make that an event field so that when the value of that changes, it's going to refresh the form, which is going to cause the form display event to go out and call the values to fill the dropdown for the objects. And we're going to have to create that business value that makes that happen. So, well, let's hit OK here just to be sure we got everything saved. And so now we have to have a sample objects business value. And you know what I'm going to do? I'm just going to copy and paste it. So we're just going to copy, and we're going to copy it here. And I'm going to open it up. And the reason I copied it is so I don't have to write that. But I am going to have to call this sample objects. So we'll give it a new name. And I also wanted to make my life easier in terms of the SQL statement, except I don't remember what I think it's sample obj, but I'm not sure. I don't remember. Excel cats sample obj. So obj. And I really should have picked that because I don't remember what the field names were. So Excel sample cats sample obj. Just need to hear that. So I need to order it by object name. But I'm going to need a where clause here. So let's go here and put in a where clause. I need to use the category ID to determine what objects I pull. So for that to happen, I'm going to need a parameter that I can pass to this business value. So I'm just going to have this parameter that I'm just going to call cat ID. And I'm going to need to change my where clause here. Also, I'm going to get rid of these properties here because I'm just going to recreate them from the SQL statement. So now that I have my cat ID, I can put in a where clause where cat ID equals, And then I'm going to use the parameter system variable, parameter cat ID. So now it should pull my category ID. So if my category ID is 1, I can test the query and it will pull all of these properties for me. I will hit add columns as properties. I don't actually need to return the cat ID, so I'm just going to go ahead and delete that because all I need are the object ID and the object name. But we're doing fine here as far as how this goes. Everything is working the way that we want it to work. I now have a valid business value, which I am going to save. And now I can go back to my form and I can set up the second of my fill dropdowns. So I can just add another dropdown, and this time I'll do the objects. And once again, we'll go to business values, ADV forms 25. This time we're going to go with sample objects. And when I pick it, it's going to be very similar to what I just did. I'm going to need my select one. And I'm going to need the display text to be the object name. I'm going to need the property to be the object ID, but I have an extra thing down here. It's got the cat ID. I have to pass the cat ID parameter to it, and I am going to get that from the categories form field. So whatever the value of the categories form field is, it will always be either 1 or 2 because there are only 2 options. It's going to pass that 1 or 2 back to the business value, and then that business value, we use that as the category ID to pull back just the appropriate objects for my use, which means that at this point, I can now update and run my form. And if I pick stuff, I should see dog and wolf. If I pick things, I should see cat and lion. And all this is going to happen automatically based on what I choose in that first. Now, if I select wolf, so keep this in mind, if I select wolf and then I go back over here and change to things, notice that wolf is going to show up with square brackets around it. Anytime you see inside a drop-down control where the display text is surrounded by square brackets, that is our way of telling you that the value that is saved in this field no longer appears in the values that are supplied for the drop down. This is one of those things that you have to be very cautious about whenever you are using dependent fields like this. And by the way, with this dependency, I've seen some customers who build out 3, 4, maybe even 5 dropdowns, all of which are dependent on the previous dropdown. Now, that's perfectly fine to do, but you're going to have to watch very carefully what happens whenever you do that, because if I go back and change the parent dropdown, then it is going to orphan the data in this dependent dropdown. Depending on how your process works and what it is that you're trying to save, these orphaned values could be troublesome. Now, just because the drop-down options have changed does not mean that the value of the control has changed. When you're doing field drop-downs, you are not changing the value of the drop-down field itself. You are only changing the options that are available for the end user to select. The value is what it is. And I can change this back and forth as much as I want. If I change it back to stuff, of course, the square brackets go away on the second dropdown. But the value is the same. The value is wolf. All I'm doing are changing the options that are available to me. So the complex issue that you run into whenever you're doing this is if I have these dependencies and someone comes back in later and makes a change to these dependencies, I have got to be able to handle the idea that there is a problem going on here with this dependency. There is a brute force way to fix this, and it works. I'm not sure it's elegant, but set form data. If I'm going to have that event, in this case, categories, then what I'm going to need to do is I'm going to need to take my objects field and I'm just going to have to set it to none. And I'm going to need to do that every time that I change my categories. So what that means as a practical matter is I'm going to go in here and I'm going to hit stuff. And there we go. We'll go with dog. Oh, wait a second. That's not what I wanted to do. I wanted to hit things. Okay, great. But if I'm going to do that on a parent, and it doesn't matter how many levels of parent you have, if I'm going to do this at any level of the parent, where I'm going to change the option that is currently selected, whatever it might be, then I am going to need to change and clear out the values in all of the dependent dropdowns. Because if I don't, the likelihood that on a reasonably or perhaps unacceptably high number of form submissions, I'm going to have orphaned data where the data in my dependent dropdown does not match the data in its parent dropdown. I do not want to be able to have stuff and cat on these two dropdowns. I can have stuff and dog. I can have thing and cat, but I can't have thing and dog or stuff and cat because that's going to be orphan data. That might be important for how your process runs as well, because you might have process timeline activities that are dependent on the value of these dropdowns. And if so, not only is your form going to be a little off, but your process timeline is going to be a little wonky. So it is fine to have these dependent controls, however many you want, however many levels you want on your form. But it's also important to remember that if you're going to change, especially on a drop down, but I guess it would be true even if it was just text fields. If you change the value of the parent, you need to clear out whatever values are in the dependent field, because you want to ensure that you have the appropriate chain of parent-child relationships, however many levels there are. In this case, there's only one, but you need to ensure that that chain is correct. And the only way to do that is however many levels of children you have below the control. If that control changes, you need to zero out all of the sub values that you might have selected so that I cannot have a category and a object that don't match. It's going to force me to go back in and change it. Obviously, I would probably want to make these required fields so that I couldn't submit the form with an empty value, because you also have to account for the fact that someone might go and just before they submit the form go, oh, wait, that's not right. I need to do that. And then try to submit the form. That's fine. I can do that unless both of these fields, well, they're now disappeared. Both of those fields are required. In that case, they would not be able to submit the form. It would force them to go back up to that objects field and select a value. They couldn't leave it blank because by changing the value of the category, they cleared it out. So that is fields dependent on fields. And some of the things you need to think about were there. And by the way, you'd be surprised at the number of customers who ask us about how do I go about doing this, what to me seems like a very simple task. So apparently there's still some misunderstanding about how dependent fields work. So you can have dependent fields, you can make them, but just ensure that you clear out child fields if you make a change to the parent, especially if you need to have that chain of validity working properly for your process. The second thing that we have to think about is showing and hiding fields based on where we are in the process. I do cover this in the advanced design concepts course. So I think it would be best just to use that course just for an example of how showing and hiding different areas of your form at different times are important. So we'll go back down here to advanced design concepts, and we will look at the completed sample application, and we'll open up our advanced form here. So I have several things that are happening on this form that I do not want to show up on the form, like when I first submit the form. Uh, I want to show and hide various parts of this form. So you can see I have all of these sections on the form. I have my submission section, I have my time off info section, complaint section, and review info section. Then I have this discussion section down here, and then I have this approval section. What I see is going to depend on one of two things. Now, in this case, I'm not worried about the control dependency in terms of value, but I'm determined, but in terms of visibility and enabling scenarios. So when I run this form, and I guess it's got to compile here, but when I run this form and it opens up in a new form instance, all I'm going to see is the submission section where I've got to determine what type of submission it is. I've got to put in my little justification, whatever that may be. And the type of form it is going to change what I see. So if it is a paid time off form, I have inside this submission section, I have a second section called time off info. So if it's going to be paid time off, I've got to put in my start date and end date. So as another example of where I have control dependencies, I can't put in an end date until I have a start date. So my start date is 8/11/2025. My end date, let's say, is going to be 8/21. Okay, well, now I've got some calculations that take place, my total time off and my total time off hours. If it's not time off, well, if it's an unpaid leave of absence, it shows me something different. If it's a complaint, I see a different section down there. If it is a review dispute, I see a different section down there. I think all of you have seen this form before, but this is all I see on submission. All of these other sections of the form will only appear at the appropriate time. So if I submit my form, and I certainly hope that the tasks are assigned to me, but if I submit my form, it should reload. And now I've got some extra stuff on the form. Obviously, I've got all this information up here, great, but I've got my milestones and discussions, and I've got my approver comments down here that will show up on the form. And so let me just go ahead and put in some approver comments, and I'm going to go ahead and deny this request. And that is going to take me to HR action, and I'm just going to go HR disposition complete. Oh, I must enter a comment because I'm HR. So now we'll go with HR disposition complete. And so now we've seen the sections that appear whenever we are in the midst of the process. After the process is done, if we go back and look at our form instance, I don't see the approval section anymore. So based on where I am in the process, different things are going to show up. The approval section is only going to show up. That was where I had my comments that I had to make. I can't make those comments now. That section has disappeared. The section that had my signature comments and that also had a checkbox to make the form editable if I wanted to make it editable. That doesn't appear anymore. That only appears, and it really only contains the signature comments field, which is really only relevant and will only display on the form anyway if I am in the process itself. In fact, that only shows up during a user task. If I have no user task, that field doesn't show up. Now, what I've done is I've placed it in a section and I've said, okay, well, that section only appears when the process timeline is active. Well, now the process timeline is not active. It is in fact complete. So I don't need to show that section anymore. It's useless to me. I still want to see my milestones and discussions because I want to see the history of what people said and also the different milestones that occurred during the processing of this request. And I obviously want to see all of my initial data up the very top that is relevant to the request that I made, but I'm going to see different things at different times in this form. This is one of the reasons why it's important and that we recommend that you do use the section controls. So let's go back here to the approval section. If all I cared about was the signature comments, then I could just drop in a signature comments control with the knowledge that that signature comments control is only going to display, and this is built into the system. It's just how signature comments controls work. That control can only display if I am A, in a user task, and B, I am in the context of that user task, which is to say, I am an assigned user in that task. Otherwise, this control simply doesn't display. Which you would think, okay, fine, well, that's great. What else? Why do I need to do all of this stuff? Well, you kind of want to have a label that says it's the approver comments. You have to make it clear in some way that the user is supposed to fill this out. And you may have instructions that go with it. Well, those instructions are not going to appear and disappear in the same way that the signature comments control is. They're always going to show up. In fact, this make info request editable is always going to show up because those are controls that are their visibility is controlled by any conditions that you may happen to set. So I not only need to worry about my signature comments control, and I really don't need to worry about it because it's going to control its own visibility. And, I could care less about configuring it, but I do have all of these other things around it. At the very least, I've got some sort of label that lets the user know that this is where they're supposed to leave their signature comments. So I put all this stuff in a section. Once the process is done, I certainly don't want to make the request editable. So I certainly don't want to show that to anybody who just happens to open the form. The signature comments control is not going to show anyway, so I don't need to show the approver comments either. So it's best to just dump these into a section. And just to say, this section is only going to show up if we're in the middle of the process. If the timeline is active, then fine, we can show this section. If it's a new form instance, we don't want to show it, obviously. If the timeline is complete, we don't want to show it. So we can control the visibility of this based on where we are in the process. And we can, in fact, set up our visibility conditions. In this case, it's timeline status equals active, otherwise hidden. But we can change those visibility conditions. For instance, we do it on email templates. Let's look at the email notification for this particular process. It has multiple email messages that get sent. We talked about that, I think, last week as well, or week before that, where I'm going to need conditions. It's probably best if I don't even look at it here. It's probably best if I go back and look at it on the Form Controls tab. For my 3 sections, I have conditions, each of which are mutually exclusive because I only want to show one of these sections at any given time. But in every case, I am looking for what activity is running. The running activity name in this case contains notification. I'm looking for specific results for when I want to show this. So I have, in fact, let's just open it up so that we can see how complex the conditions are for this. In both cases, I need to think about whether I am running in an activity name that contains the word notification. Now, I only have one activity in my timeline that uses the word notification, so it's only possibly going to run in one particular timeline activity. But this hides and shows the entire section based on what activity is running, and furthermore, what the results were of previous activity, what the request type is, because I have 4 different request types that might be submitted in the application form. And it's having to make all of those judgments to determine whether to show or to hide. So showing and hiding is very important in terms of knowing where we are in the process. Most of the time, especially when people just start using Process Director, they don't think much about that, and they just make a form, and that form is, the form, and all of the fields are always editable at all times, and anybody who has access to the form can go in and edit it, and everything that's on that form always gets shown. That may not be the best idea. So being able to take a form and show and hide it based on where you are in the process is often quite important. So we have fields that are dependent on other fields, which usually indicates that the data in the field, like in the 2 drop-downs I showed you, is dependent on each other. But that also works for visibility, where we just saw if I pick a complaint, I see a different section on the form than I would if I picked time off. So visibility can also be dependent on the value of other form fields on the form. And then we have the fields that are dependent in some way on the process, which is almost invariably, not always, but almost invariably, it is the visibility or enabling of a form section or form control based on where we are in the process. It's 11:22. So let's move on to forms as a UI, and that's probably the most complex part of the session. Now, I'm going to cheat by opening up this page and moving it off the screen, and we are going to pretend like I am not using it as an instruction sheet or as a source of data to copy and paste things from, but it is. Let's talk about workspaces. So swap over to my user profile. This is the workspace. I have it set up to show 3 panes, although I shouldn't, because I don't think there's anything in this bottom pane, because all I really care about are the task list and the running processes. Now, in both cases, what I'm showing here are knowledge views. And we're kind of in the habit of thinking about workspaces in that way. But that's not the only way that we can set up workspaces to work. We can, in fact, set up forms in a workspace, and we can use that form as a UI itself. In fact, for applications that BP Logix builds, we do this quite a lot. And I have buttons on the form, and clicking those buttons enables me to, well, I don't have any active HR items apparently. Do I have any active IT requests? No, I do not. I'm not sure any of these requests will be active, although I don't have any active tasks, so I know that my task list, excuse me, I know that my task list is going to be blank. In fact, I should have known that all of this was going to be blank because I've got these active HR requests and I've got this they all say 0. So I should have known that clicking on these buttons wasn't going to work. But I could make a new HR request by clicking on that button there at the very top. And there's my HR request. It's not very complex, but I can submit it. But hey, I now have, if I refresh my workspace, I now have one active IT request. I actually have one active task in my task list. Look, I've even got a chart over here, and obviously it shows me at the top, and I could do a new IT request. All of this is being done inside a form that is specially constructed to act as a process director UI form. Now, I should point out, this is not a standard thing, that there is a little JavaScript wizardry that the product includes that you have to invoke to be able to do any of this. So let's go to settings. Let's go to configuration, and let's see what I've done here. So I have this UI sample workspace here. And it opens up some different forms on the navigation button. Obviously, the home page just refreshes whatever the home page is. We'll take a look at what the home page is because that's important in a second. And then I have navigation buttons to open up my IT request form. So it's right here in the advanced UI thing, which we're going to go look at here in a second. And I've also got the HR form there, so I can open those up. But the important part of that is that I have a partition dashboard. It's called main. And let's take a look at that partition dashboard. So that's all that my workspace does. All that my workspace does is it shows a couple of navigation buttons, and it shows a single screen to display this main dashboard there. However, we're going to change this a little bit. We're going to update it. I'm using the dashboard for a reason, but technically, if I save that, and I go at, where is it? Where is it? UI sample. That's what I'm looking for. The workspace portlet is a form, but it is not configured to point to an object. So technically, I can set the form as the workspace object. However, it's not going to display it's not going to display it the way that you expect it to display. So, like I said, there's a reason why I'm going through a dashboard. So I'll have to go back to configuration. I have to go back to UI sample, and I will have to change this from partition form, which is a valid option, but it's not going to be useful for us because I need to show it via the partition dashboard. So I need to once again go back to training webinar. And of course, this is the archive and this is advanced UI. And we want to go to the completed app and we want to go to UI elements and then finally main. And now we can update it. And now when I go to the home page of my workspace, it has not updated yet. Did I fail to save it? Did I close it without saving it? No, I did save it. It says partition dashboard main. I have noticed sometimes this caches longer than I would ideally like, but we've now apparently gotten over that and we now have our dashboard. All right, let's take a look at how we make this work. I was going to build this from scratch, but it's 11:30, so I think I'm running out of time. So I think we're just going to have to look at the original form. I have a form here called main UI. This is not a special form. It doesn't have any magical stuff in it. There's no scripting or anything like that. There are a couple of things, though. It's not in options. There are a couple of things, though, that I have done that just make it look cool. And I'll show you here. I guess I can still use this as an example, even though I'm not going to need to copy and paste stuff out of here anymore. See these little shadows around these boxes? Well, that's CSS. And that CSS is just this little bit right there. I can throw in, there's a CSS command that's called box shadow. And that's all I've done. If you want to talk about special sauce, this is the only special sauce that requires any programming, HTML, or CSS knowledge at all. You just drop in a box dash shadow command and it throws it. I've got this called metric panel. Pretty much everything that we need to do happens here in the design view. So let's continue that. These are just tables. And so I have a table here that has a table cell in it. And is it cell properties or is it table properties where I did this? It's table properties. So this table here, I've put that style that we just saw, which is called metric panel for our form. I've just applied that as a style sheet class to this table. And this table basically is a tiny little table that just contains that right there. And so I've applied that style to the table and it gives it that 3D look. That's the only special thing that I have done. Everything else is built-in process director stuff, although it's probably built-in process director stuff that you didn't know much about. So for visual purposes, I've got that style and I've put in all of this other stuff at the top. I mean, the image is actually just using cur_user format equals picture. That is my user profile image that we saw just a few minutes ago. This is just a BP-Logix image control, which, by the way, I do want to point out, there is this image control at on the very top row. Now, I use that for a lot of stuff. For example, I use it for this logo image. This is the wrong logo image. I should actually use the white logo image that we have rather than this colored one, but leave that aside. That image control is useful, and I use it for a lot of stuff, and it allows me to change the width and height and also to, be sure that the aspect ratio of the image remains unchanged. It's really cool. But you don't want to use it for everything. It's great to use it for a UI thing like this for a logo, but it is not the same control as the BP-Logix image control. That is control that is built specifically for Process Director, and it operates a little bit differently. Apart from anything else, it parses system variables. So when I want to put in, well, I just clicked out of it. So when I want to put in the image URL, I put in current user format equals picture. That returns the URL of my profile image, or whoever the current user is, their profile image, so that it can display in the image control. Similarly, I've done the same thing. I just pulled the username off of the current user. So normal standard process director stuff. The tables, standard process director stuff. In fact, these numbers that show me how many active HR requests or IT requests or active tasks I have, those are just system variables. I have business values that just return the number of active processes that are running for HR requests, the number of active processes that are running for the IT requests, or the number of active tasks. So I just have business values that just return that. They just query process director and they pull back that data. We can take a look at them actually if we want to, just so that you see what I'm pulling. So here's the active HR business value. It's a form instances data source. It just pulls back a property called count, and the only thing that it returns is the number of knowledge view rows. It's actually not a form instances, it's a knowledge view data source. So I have a knowledge view called active HR, just a knowledge view that returns all of the active HR requests. That's all it does. That's a normal knowledge view like you would make for any other application where you say, show me all of the active requests. You usually have one knowledge view that shows you all the old stuff. And then you usually have one new that just shows you, the world of what's happening now for that particular application, just your active running requests. Okay, fine. I can create a business value. Just look at that knowledge view and just say, give me the number of rows. And that's what I've done for active HR. That's what I've done for active IT because I have an active IT knowledge view, which again, just returns the list of form instances that are, the list of form instances where the timeline status equals active. And then same thing on my tasks. I have my task list, a knowledge view called my task list, which only shows the either HR or IT tasks that have been assigned to me, and it creates a custom task list. So it's just a custom task list. And for my active tasks, once again, number of knowledge view rows. That's all I need. And so all I have to do is just grab the count property for each of those on my UI, and I basically just made what is essentially a big text box. It's actually a system variable control where I've just made the text big. I've literally just gone to the font size and set it to 48. So that's all I've done. I have one CSS style that I apply to the table. All the rest of this is just text inside table cells. Now, this is a button control, and we'll have to talk about that in a little bit, but I got a lot of button controls on here, but we'll cover those later. I have 5 buttons in point of fact. Down here, this table consists of 3 columns. Now, the first column has 3 tables that are sort of stacked on top of each other. The second column, I've just got a knowledge view control. And that knowledge view control is using the my task list knowledge view. Remember, I said I created my task list over here. It's just a custom task list, and that's all it is. And it actually is what displays in this second column. In the third column, it's a show report control. And all it does is it looks at a report called status chart. So what I did is I used the report generator. Let's go take a quick look at that. And by the way, you can have all of this stuff. Just let me know. I'll submit a tech support, say, give it to me, email me, whatever. I'll give it to you. So I've got this chart here. Charts count as reports. So I have a chart called status chart, and you've got the data source and all of that stuff, and it should show me, I think I have 1 activity running. Yeah, I do. So it's a pie chart. I have 1 active activity. So It's 100% of my active tasks with my one activity. It's just a chart. Now, charts, as I said, count as reports. So what that means is on my little form here in this third column, I can just stick in a show report control. Again, it's one of those weird other controls that we never use hardly, like the knowledge view control. That's the one that I used in column 2. And in column 3, it's the show report control. And all I have to do is just set the default value as a content item and just choose my status chart that we just saw right over here. I just select that as the content item and it shows me my chart. And that status chart looks at my task list and it pulls back the number of tasks. And then if it is an HR task, it counts the number of HR tasks, counts the number of IT tasks, and then makes a pie chart to determine how many IT tasks I have compared to how many HR tasks. So that part is simple. But here is where it gets a little bit tricky. I have 6 hidden controls on the bottom of this form. All of them are hidden. They never show up. They're all just marked as hidden. 5 of them are content pickers. We'll get to them in a second. One of them is a button area control. This button area control is also, if we scroll way over here to field properties, is also hidden. Why put a button area control on a form and then just mark it as hidden? Well, the reason we're doing that is because if we do not put a button area control on the form, Process Director will put one on there for us automatically. I don't want to see the automatic one. I do not want to see a submit or a cancel changes button on this form. And because it's a form, every time it shows up in my dashboard, this form is going to show up as a form instance. And the Process Director is going to want to run it, which means it's going to have a submit and a cancel changes button. I don't want to see those buttons. So by placing a button area control on the form, it stops Process Director from putting its own button area control on the form automatically, which is what it does if you don't use the button area control. But because I used a button area control, that now controls when the button area is also visible or not. And I can have multiple button area controls on a form, some of them visible at different times. In this case, I never want it to be visible. So putting the button area control on the form tells Process Director, A, he's got a button area control. I don't need to put one of my own on there. And then I just mark it as hidden so it never shows up. Now we have to take a look at the content pickers, because each of these content pickers is related to a button on the control, on the form. So I have a content picker here. The name of the content picker is HR form. And on its field properties, it's pointing to a content item, and that content item is the HR form, which is why the control is named HR form. What a content picker does is basically like a user picker pulls the entire user object so that I can take a user picker and from it derive a user's email address or their supervisor or their supervisor's email address or their department or whatever. The content picker does the same thing for content list objects. It brings back all of the properties of that content list object. Like the user picker, the actual value that gets stored in a content picker is the object ID of whatever content list object it is pointed at. In this case, it's pointed at the HR form. But I need it because I need that object. Because this is a UI form, I want to be able to open that HR form with a button. So thus, I have a new request button. It's got its text, new HR request. It's got its icon number and its color and its back color. And normally, what I would do on a form when I had a button is I would go into the form definition and I would invoke some sort of, on the form event, I would invoke a custom task, or I would invoke a set form data, or launch a different process. That's not what I want to do here. I don't want the button to do a process director thing on the server side. I need to use the on client click property. And that on client click property is going to enable me to short circuit any of the back end stuff that you would expect to happen in Process Director, prompts a reload of the form. The event gets transmitted to the back end. It then invokes the custom task from the custom task event mapping tab on the form click event. None of that happens. I'm going to hijack that by using the on client click event. And there is a JavaScript API built into Process Director called iPopUpSimple. And we're going to have to take a look at what I'm putting in this on client click, because what I'm doing with that on client click is I'm calling that JavaScript API with iPopUpSimple. So iPopUpSimple is a JavaScript command that at its basis accepts a very simple argument, which is basically the URL. Now we have to construct that URL using system variables. I thought I had a real simple thing of iPopUpSimple. I do. So I can copy that. This is at its fundamental. This is the basis of iPopUpSimple. It just says, iPopUpSimple says, give me a URL and I'll just open it in a new little window. And that's all it does. It just opens it up in a new window. Constructing the URL is a little tricky because of the way Process Director URLs work. So we're going to have to use some system variables to make it happen. All forms in Process Director, all of them, are opened via the same Process Director page. It's called form.aspx. It's a ASP.NET page that basically creates the visual display for a form based on the ID of the form that you are pulling back. So it's a very flexible page, but you always call form.aspx. So to make this as simple as possible, what we're going to do is we're going to use interface URL. Now that will return in this particular case, training or https://training.bplogix.net/ as the interface URL. It always includes the trailing slash. This is why it's super important whenever you are configuring Process Director, that when you go to your installation settings page, that you fill out the interface URL for your interface, which in this case is training.bplogix.net. Now, the interface URL system variable always returns the trailing slash. You just have to know that. It's documented in the documentation too. So I want to get to the form.aspx page, which is at training.bplogix.net/form.aspx. Now, the trouble with the form.aspx page is that it requires the form ID as a query parameter. So it's got the question mark there for the query parameter. And the parameter that you want to pass to it, of course, is form ID. Trouble is, I don't know what the form ID is for the HR form. Could I get it? Sure. I could open up the HR form and I could go here and I could find where's the form ID. There it is right there, 9F69. And I really wanted to highlight it, but unfortunately I highlighted the equal sign. We have to redo that. This is just super tedious. You don't want to do that. You could, but I've got a content picker control right there that already points to the form that I want to pull back. So therefore, when I construct that URL and I put in the form ID, I've got the HR form control, and I just say format equals ID. And that form control will just return the object ID for that form. And so therefore, I've got everything I need to pull that form up. It will create a new instance of the form when I click the button in a new window and will just pop it right open for me as quick as you please. So I'm going to do the same thing over here for my new IT request. The only thing that is going to change is I'm going to point to a different content picker because I have a content picker called IT form. So my iPop-up simple for that, I would just copy and paste there. It's exactly the same. The only difference is it's now pulling the IT form. So I can copy and paste that and literally just go in and replace HR with IT because I have named it in a logical and forthright manner, and it's going to pull that form up in a new form instance with iPop-up simple. Now, I also have these buttons over here. You can't see them because they're colored the same color more or less as the background of the table cell that they're in. But I have new HR2, new IT request 2, and new IT request 1. Not sure why I named the buttons that, but that doesn't matter. We'll just take a look at this button and note I have 3 other controls. I have active HR, active IT, and active tasks. Now, in the case of each one of these, the content item that they display is a knowledge view. So if we look at my new HR2 button and we go to its button properties and we look at the on client click for it, it's going to be slightly different because now we are going to be pulling back a knowledge view, not a form instance. However, knowledge views work very much like forms work. The only difference is that the knowledge view page is actually called kv.aspx instead of form.aspx. And rather than form ID, we just use ID. You have no idea how much, as a former C# software developer, this irritates me because if this is form ID, why is this not KV ID? And the answer is, I don't know. I didn't create it. But it irks me to no end that the URL parameter is ID, but there you have it. That's what the URL parameter is. And again, I'm just looking at active HR. I'm not really doing anything different here. In fact, it's all exactly the same. The only thing I have to change is the name of the page and the name of the URL parameter. And it is now going to open up this knowledge view in a pop-up window, just like it opened up the forms in the pop-up window previously. That's all that you have to know how to do. And by calling iPop-up simple, that's the only weird thing on client click. you can create this UI. Now, there is one other step that we have to talk about before I run completely out of time, and that is this dashboard, which is called main, and it's a pretty simple dashboard. It's just got a form widget in it. Obviously, this form widget calls the main UI form and displays it, and that's all it displays. And it is, of course, this dashboard that gets displayed as the home page in the UI sample workspace. And when that workspace shows up, all of my stuff works exactly the way that I would expect it to work. The only thing is it does not respect the settings that I have in my vars file for the preferred size of forms that I want to have the system open up. Other than that, however, I have got a full-scale, relatively flexible, and certainly prettier way of creating a UI for my end users than I would with just using the simple workspaces that are available to us just by default. Because compared to this, going back to this, well, it's kind of ugly and kind of old style. So you do have the option to make your UI much nicer for your end user. I, however, have no further options than to stop the webinar because we're rapidly approaching noon. Have a great week. Feature Spotlight webinar will happen on Tuesday of next week. I have some interesting enhancements and other things about the product that you might want to hear on Tuesday, so be sure to show up for that. Otherwise, I will see you again next Thursday for some very wild stuff that I'm working on, and it'll be totally new content. So you won't want to miss that. We'll see you then. So long.